What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome to the show. I am super stoked to have you. This week's episode is brought to you by Jeff White and his UX Storytelling Toolkit. Now, lots of people talk about the importance of storytelling for UX designers, but Jeff brings actionable clarity to the concept, and he shows you exactly how to do it. He breaks down different real-world scenarios, like how to use different storytelling methods to present your work to clients and stakeholders, how to craft a better case study for your portfolio, and how to improve portfolio presentations for job interviews. And I love Jeff's approach to storytelling here. It's not your simple once upon a time kind of stuff. And since you're an amazing listener, and I know that this course will help you out so much, I partnered with Jeff to give everybody listening a 10% discount if you use the code BeyondUX when you check out. So head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/storytelling and use the code BeyondUX at checkout to get 10% off Jeff's storytelling course. So learn some incredible techniques to influence your team and advance your UX career. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. If you are a regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That'll help me out so much more than you can imagine. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, and Michelle for all their support. And if you want to join those fine folks and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you'll get rough transcripts and exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. And you can get instant access to that video archive for as little as $5 a month. And for more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing here, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then I would love it if you told some friends. So if you're a UX designer, any phase in your career, you've probably come across the phrase, the acronym OKR, objectives and key results. And if you're lucky and you're in a good team, your team is doing it at work. But have you ever thought about using OKRs for your personal life? Not a lot of people have. I actually hadn't considered it until I talked to my friend Jeff Gothelf here. I am so excited to have Jeff on the show. You probably know his name, I'm sure. So I'm really excited to have Jeff on the show today. We're going to talk about all about how you can take OKRs, something you're probably familiar with work, and apply it to personal life. So Jeff, I'm really excited to have you on. Jeff is a product management expert, practitioner, and thought leader. He helps organizations build better products and executives build the cultures that build better products. He's the co-author of the award-winning book Lean UX, now in its 3rd edition, and the Harvard Business Review press book Sense and Respond. His most recent book, Forever Employable, was published in June 2020. Starting off as a software designer, then product manager, and finally entrepreneur, Jeff now works as a keynote speaker, trainer, coach, and board advisor, helping companies bridge the gaps between business agility, digital transformation, product management, and human-centered design. Jeff's currently working on Who Does What by How Much, his 5th book, and 3rd with co-author Josh Seaton. This new book is the how-to guide for implementing objectives and key results in every mission. And we're going to take a little bit of those learnings and apply them to personal life today. Jeff, welcome to Beyond UX Design. I am so excited to have you on. How's it going?
It's going great, Jeremy. Thanks for having me, and thanks for getting through that bio. That's hearing you say it out loud. I was like, I got to edit that thing. It's so
It wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. Yeah, I try to give everybody their due here on Beyond UX. Give them a little shout out. So Jeff, I think a lot of people out there probably know you. I hope they know you. If they don't know you, I don't know what they're doing. But before we get into today, for those who may not be aware, we got a lot of junior designers, career shifters listening that might be new to the UX industry. Tell them a little bit about you, brief overview. And, your expertise with OKRs, and then we're going to hop in the conversation and talk about OKRs personal life today. So tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. So I started my career, I guess about 25 years ago at this point, doing basic web design in the kind of the first .com explosion, if you will. And certainly that's where it ended up. Transitioned into information architecture. And as the web became more sophisticated, into UX design, interaction design, et cetera. About midway through that time frame, I ended up managing teams. And when I was leading design teams, one of the biggest challenges that we kept coming across was how to do great design work, UX design work specifically within agile software development environments. So about 10, 15 years ago, Agile was really catching on. It's still big. It's still, I think you'll struggle to find an organization that doesn't at least that they're using agile software development. But one of the challenges was how do you do great design? And nobody had a good answer. And I'm talking about sort of like the late 2000s, kind of mid to late 2000s. Nobody had a great answer. And so myself, my team, other folks in the space were working together, and we figured out an answer. I'm not going to say it's the only answer, but we figured out an answer. And that turned into the conversation around lean UX. And I ended up writing a book about lean UX. And that really changed what I did for a living, because folks stopped asking me to kind of design stuff or lead design teams, and instead to come teach the material that's in the book. And so since then, talking about sort of the mid 2013, 2014, I've been working as a trainer, a speaker, a coach, an author, a writer, a consultant to some extent, helping teams build great products and really blend software development, design, product management, et cetera, in a human-centric, customer-centric way that not only makes the customer successful, builds really great businesses around that. And that's what I've been doing for 9 years. In between sort of working in-house and being a solopreneur for the last 9 years, I managed to start a consulting company and ran that with some other friends, and managed to run that for 4 years, and learned a lot. Learned I don't want to do that again, and and these days I work with large organizations, primarily mid-sized companies as well, a little bit high growth companies, who are trying to build excellent design practices, product management practices, and human-centric ways of setting goals, which is where the OKR conversations really have been coming into play for the last few years.
Yeah, I love it. Well, yeah, I was looking backwards because I think I have a few of your books here on my bookshelf. So
that's Josh's
I love
book
it
right there, the one in your hand. Yeah.
Oh, this one, yeah, you and this outcomes over output. I love this one. And anyway, you got some good stuff. So anyway, anybody out there listening hasn't listened or hasn't read any of Jeff's books, please by all means go check it out. They're all fantastic read and very easy to read, by the way. They're not like super dense. They're easy to digest, which I loved. A good business book that's easy to digest. It's not too technical. So we're going to talk a little bit about OKRs today. And like I said, it's funny because I worked in enterprise for a long time, and everything you were saying about, they say they do agile. Do they really do agile? Like agile, waterfall, agile. We do waterfall and sprints. So a lot of people out there might be familiar with OKRs. And I'll be perfectly honest. I think it's you mentioned a lot of companies, they say they do agile. I think a lot of companies say they do OKRs. Yeah. A lot of companies aren't really doing OKRs the way I think you talk about in a lot of your literature and the things you say. So I'm curious, I want to level set a little bit, because I feel like there are a lot of people out there who are familiar with OKRs in name only. Yeah. And when they think about OKRs, they're probably, I feel like a lot of teams aren't really doing it the right way. So before we start talking about applying OKRs to your personal life, I want to make sure we're not doing that sort of bastardized OKR thing with our personal life. I want to level set a little bit. So tell me a little bit about, I'd love to hear from your perspective, because you've been doing a lot of consulting in a lot of these companies. How have you seen OKRs applied incorrectly? And let's try to fix that today, so when we start applying it to our personal life, we're not doing it the wrong way.
Yeah. So OKRs have been around for a long time, first of all, and I didn't invent them. Nobody invented them recently. They were invented by Andy Grove at Intel, and you could argue they were sort of built upon management by objectives, which was a concept prior to that. And that was 40 years ago or more at this point. The reason why we're having conversations about OKRs now is because about 8 years ago, a guy named John Doerr, one of the more successful venture capitalists, investors of our day, wrote a book called Measure What Matters. And every CEO in the world bought that book. And they were like, OKRs, I need this. Google uses it. Bono uses it. Therefore, it must be good. Now, the interesting thing about the book, and I'm grateful to John Doerr and obviously and Andy Grove for bringing these ideas to light. What's interesting is that Measure What Matters is it's an inspirational book. It's not a practical book. So it doesn't tell you how to actually do the work. Doerr isn't particularly opinionated about how OKRs should look, how they should be used. He's like, here's how Google did it, and here's how Bono uses it, and here's how Microsoft uses it, and this other company, and that type of thing. And that has led to a lot of the confusion, because I think the CEOs who were inspired by the book went to implement this, and there wasn't a clear, opinionated, practical plan, a recipe, if you will, to follow for them to start with. And so everybody kind of did their own thing, and they realized that this was a simple concept, but difficult to implement. Essentially, they ended up with sort of faux KRs, if you will, right? Forgive me. That's such a terrible
that's been my experience with the KRs.
Yeah, and what it is that being is just kind of a rebranding of whatever goal system you have in place today. So just to kind of set the record straight, right? OKRs are a goal setting framework, right? It's a system, a process for setting goals. It's in my opinion, and in our new book, we have a couple of strong opinions. One is that OKRs are a team-based goal setting framework, especially when they're being used inside an organization. So we're going to talk about them outside of an organization, but inside an organization, we don't recommend that they be used for personal goals. We'll talk about why in just a second, right? So it's team-based goal setting framework that is focused on the why behind the work. So what's the qualitative objective that we're trying to achieve? What's the benefit we're trying to create for our customers and our users in the world? And then sort of the quantitative side is how will we know the key results? How will we know that we've achieved that? And the only way that we actually know that is by measuring changes in their behavior, in human behavior. And that is where we get very, very opinionated in our book, and disagrees sometimes directly with Doerr and certainly with a lot of practitioners out there. But for us, the only way that this system actually makes a difference, in our opinion, and I say ours, it's Josh Seiden and me who've been writing books and working together for years. The only way that this makes a difference, the only way that this makes anything better is if your measure of success ends up being a meaningful change in human behavior and out.
Yeah.
And that is what OKRs are. So it's a qualitative goal, a benefit you're trying to create out of the world, a change in the world, and measures in human behavior that tell you now because people are doing something differently, we've actually made that change in the world. And so that's our opinionated view, and certainly my opinionated view of objectives and key results. And where this breaks down most often, which was actually your question, so we're coming back to your question. Forgive me for taking so long to get there.
No, that's fine.
Where this breaks down most often is that most organizations will set their key results to be output. They set it to be either the deployment of a feature, the production of something, or the completion of a task or activity. And all of those things are output. They are the things that we do, right, that are then supposed to trigger some kind of change in behavior in the people who consume the work that we create. And the reason why this is an anti-pattern, and the reason why this is a mistake, in my opinion, is because it literally changes nothing. We're back to rebranding our goals as OKRs, but we've changed literally nothing, right? We call them key results now, but the key result is still ship this feature by Friday and make it red. Right?
Yeah.
And that's what it was before it was OKRs. We're just calling it OKRs now, right? Rather than, hey, did we figure out a way to get people through the checkout funnel more successfully? Right? Did we reduce shopping cart abandonment rates, which are actual measures of success, right? Because deploying a thing is, given how frequently we can do that today, it's a non-event. The real measure of success is, did we actually get folks to change behavior in a meaningful way for them? And that's meaningful for us as a business. So that's the biggest breakdown that I've seen so far.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you're saying that too, changing human behavior, when we talk about personal goals, right? Often our goals are it requires at least some change in our behavior, right? If I want to lose 20 pounds, if I want to get a promotion, if I want to do whatever, I can't keep doing the same thing I'm doing now. I can't eat a bunch of cheeseburgers and expect to lose 20 pounds.
No.
I can't also say, to your point, my key result can't be go to the gym 3 days a week, because I could go to the gym, fiddle around and not do anything and still never meet my goal of losing 20 pounds. Right. So I love that idea, though. And as you're speaking, as you're saying that, so many things are going off my head about how to apply these and the parallels between personal and work and things like that. So I'm curious, though, when we talk about OKRs for personal goals, something probably happened. I assume there's some event in your life, some anecdote or something. I'm curious, how did this kind of idea come about in your head to say, we could apply these ideas to personal life too?
Yeah, it's interesting too, because just a quick, just kind of draw out a contrast here. When we do this work with companies, right? When I'm working with a customer or a client of mine, implementing OKRs, helping them figure it out, we are adamant that we do not use OKRs at the individual level. Right?
Okay.
And there's a difference, because when you're doing personal OKRs, you are absolutely doing it at the individual level. It's you that we're talking about. Let me draw a contrast and show you why. When we're working inside an organization, let's say you're a designer, right? Whatever, entry-level designer, right? First, second, third year. And if you set a personal OKR, your objective is become a mid-level designer. Okay. And then what ends up happening inevitably is the key results for those types of goals end up being things like attend a conference, take 3 online courses, and polish my portfolio, whatever. Right? Okay, you go do those 3 things. Are you a mid-level designer?
Suddenly, yeah,
Yes,
magically.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You did 3 things. You went, like maybe, but maybe not. The only way that we know that you're a mid-level designer is if other people's behavior changes around you, right? So as the work that you do inside an organization seeks to change the behavior of other people around you. Now so that's why for us that breaks down at the personal level, and we don't recommend that. Now, when you think about this outside of an organization, for your personal goals, you are constantly interacting in the real world with other people and including yourself, right? And so in those situations, the behavior changes that we're looking for are a lot more measurable and a lot more quantifiable. So you said weight loss. Weight loss is a super common, it's a super common personal OKR, and it's an easy one to start with, right? My objective is I'd like to become, I'd like to get in better shape this year. Right. That's a great objective. We're going to work towards that. And so your key results are going to be, I'd like to, reduce my weight by, 10%. I'd like to, reduce the amount of time it takes me to run a mile by 30 seconds and whatever, like one other thing. Those are measurable changes in human behavior. The human just happens to be you in this particular case. So when we're looking at those personal goals, in this particular case, you can't game this. You can't game this system, right? And like you said before, right, the activities that help us get in better shape, run faster, lose weight, those are output, right? Those are the variables in all of this. Go to the gym 3 times. It's okay. I've been going to the gym 3 times. I've lost nothing. Gym 4 times, let's try that. Go to the gym 5 times, get a personal trainer, right? Run stairs, whatever it is, right? Eat zucchini for a month. Like all of those various things, those are the tactics, right? Those are the outputs that you try to see if it changes ultimately your key results. In this case, your weight, the speed with which you can run a mile, et cetera, all of those various things. The other aspect of this, by the way, is if the goal, so the easy one to start with is always personal fitness, right? But let's say you are trying to create, I don't know, you're trying to become a thought leader in your space, right? You're trying to build a personal brand in the UX world, right? That's my objective. My objective is to become better known in the UX world, by the end of next year. Cool. How will you know? Because there's an infinite number of ways to do that. You can start a podcast, right? Yep. You can write a book. You can write 18 books, right? You can write a book a day for a year, whatever, like blog posts. You can speak at conferences and meetups and you can hold up a sign outside the mall and say, I'm a UX expert, ask me anything, whatever. Mm-hmm. Like there's an infinite number of tactics. How will you know? Right? Yeah. How will you know that you are now, you've increased your personal brand in the UX space? Well, I'm getting more, like I'd like to see at least 1 inbound question per week from somebody about UX, right? So people are starting to recognize that I have expertise and they are emailing me. I'd like to get at least 1 invitation per quarter to speak at a meetup. And I'd like 1 invitation per year to speak at per half year or whatever to speak at a conference, right? So what we're doing in this scenario, and this is a difference from the weight loss and the fitness OKR, is we are changing the behavior of other people again. Right? Yeah. So the activities that you use to do that are infinite. You can choose to do an infinite number of things. But the way that you're measuring success is, are people coming to me? Are they inviting me for this or inviting me for that? And that's a goal you've set for yourself that says, feels like I'm building my personal brand.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and that's something too that resonates with me a little bit. Starting the podcast, doing all these other things. And I've found that, I'm asking myself very similar questions. How do I increase weight? And the interesting thing too that I think a lot of people maybe miss, and this is maybe something and I'm curious what you think, something that's different from work is, often at work, OKRs are set by leadership somewhere higher up above you because they don't generally go down to the individual contributor very often.
Yeah.
And the question that I ask myself is why? Why do I want this goal?
Yeah.
Which I think is something that a lot of people don't really think about. Like, I want to lose 20 pounds, but why? Like, is there a reason? Like, are you whatever? In this case, like a thought leader, I want to be a thought leader. What does that do for me? Why? Why do I want to be a thought leader? Why did I start a podcast? I ask myself that question all the time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of effort for very little return often. And I question that, not to say I'm going to stop doing it, but that's something I'm curious what you think there is that sort of maybe a difference too from personal versus work is, you're handed one, someone gives you one and you're tied to that OKR somehow, trickle down hopefully. But, in personal life, it's like, why are we doing this? Anyway, I'm curious what your thoughts are. Like, how do you go about deciding what to track, what to measure, what to do, Yeah,
it's super interesting, right? Because I know a fairly broad and diverse group of folks these days, and I would guess that about a third of them are intentional about their goals, where they'll start the beginning of every year and they'll say, these are my goals for 2024, right? And this is what I'd like to achieve as a human being, as a parent, as a partner, as work, whatever your work is, right, et cetera, right, in my life. And then there's the rest of the folks who are not as intentional about it. And I think it's interesting, right? Like you said, I think at work, you think about it less because oftentimes it's handed to you, or at least you're part of the conversation around, well, we're doing this because, well, we serve our customers in this particular way, and currently we're failing to do that. That's the why behind it. But in your personal life, it's really interesting, right? I think there needs to be, like, if you're not one of these people who's intentional about this, and I think it's just a kind of a quality of a person, right? Not a good or a bad one, it just is, right? I think for those folks, the why is pretty clear. Like, I'd like to be intentional in my choices. I'd like to be focused. I'd like to, spend my time in very specific ways. I think for folks who are less intentional about their goals, the why question is really good. And I think it's a really tough one, right? Because usually what ends up pushing them towards doing that is some kind of an event, right? Something happens in their life and they're like, crap, right?
Yeah.
I really need to get my stuff together on this front. Like, I've been really floating along in my career, like all the layoffs we've been having the last couple of years, right? Like, maybe you got laid off, right? And you're like, crap, that's a kick in the pants. What am I going to do about it? Right. Yeah. I've been floating around for a while, been pretty easy, coasting job to job, no issues. And now, crap, it's been 6 months. I can't find work. Right. Usually it's some kind of an event that gives people that kind of that punch. And then that usually drives the why. Right. So why? Because I can't stop me getting laid off in the future, but I can certainly work to reduce the downtime between gigs. Right. And go another 6 to 9 months without work. Right. Yeah. That's the why behind it. And so, but I tend to see is that if you're not, and again, in my role, it's about 2/3 to 1/3 of sort of unintentional to intentional. But if you're one of those folks who doesn't intentionally set goals on an annual level, or any kind of level, it usually ends up at some kind of an event. You have an injury, you get sick, something happened, tragedy or something. I don't know. Right. Something kicks you in the butt and you're like, okay, crap, I got to get intentional about this.
Yeah. That's, it's interesting you mentioned that too, because I went through that exactly. One of the reasons why I actually started doing LinkedIn posting and doing the podcast and all that was because I got laid off and had to move across the country for a job and all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? Next time, I don't want to be so desperate that I have to move across the country for work. And so that was really what kind of kicked off a lot of this podcast and everything else. So I never really thought about it though, as intentional. I was just kind of like thinking about like, I need to figure out how to like meet more people and do more things and network and grow my personal brand and things like that. And it was very similar to what you said. I need to like decrease the time between gigs. So anyway, that resonates with me a lot. I don't know if you plan that.
No,
that one, I feel like maybe I'm just not the only person in that situation right now. I feel like it's pretty, unfortunately, very common. So one of the things I'm curious about, and this is something that, we mentioned this before, a lot of companies fail when it comes to the KR part, the key results part, right? They tend to measure the wrong thing or look at the wrong thing. You gave some really good examples, but I'm curious, when you're coming up with these OKRs for yourself, for your personal life, the objective, is pretty easy, pretty straightforward. But I think we might tend to get tripped up on the key result part and the thing we mentioned, going to the gym versus some other measure. And I'm curious, when you're planning this out and thinking about being intentional, how does somebody who may not be super familiar with this framework go about making sure that they are tracking the right key results versus the output, like you mentioned? Is there some method? Is there some framework that you like to think about?
Yes, there's two halves to that answer, right? The first half is writing a good key result, and by good I mean syntactically correct, right? To make sure that you are truly measuring human behavior. I think that's the first half of this, and then the second part, and we'll talk about that in a second. The second part of it is actually making sure that this key result makes sense as a measure of whether or not you achieve the objective, which is not always the case, by the way. Just because you wrote it doesn't mean that it actually is a good metric for whether or not you achieve the objective. And you may not figure that out for a little while as well. But let's start with the first part, right? So the first part about how do you know if you've written a good key result? Well, the question that we wrote for this, to teach this, became the title of our next book, which is Who Does What by How Much? It's a book about OKRs. It's coming out on May 28th. And this is how we teach it. So you know that you've written a good key result when your key result answers the question, who does what by how much, right? So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a human being who, not a system, right? But a human, right? What are they doing? And then by how much? Like, are they doing more of it by X percent, less of it by Y percent? What are we looking for in those cases, right? So that's how you, so for example, if we go through kind of all the examples that we've talked about so far, right? Your personal fitness one, who does what by how much? Jeff runs a mile 20% faster. Okay. There's a human who does something differently. That is a well-written key result. Is it the right key result? Different question, but it's a well-written key result. My objective is to become a mid-level UX designer, right? By the end of the year. Who does what by how much? Hiring managers or recruiters, maybe like 50% of inbound jobs are for mid-level positions, something like that. Right? That could be again. So who does what by how much there? It's hiring managers and recruiters send mid-career, mid-level job opportunities at least 50% of the time, right? Something along those lines. Become a thought leader, right? By the end of 2025, who does what by how much? Conference organizers invite me to speak 4 times a year. Online publications or podcast hosts invite me to be on the podcast at least once a month, right? Who does what by how much? So that's how you know that you're writing a well-written key result. So that's half the battle, right? To make sure that you're not kind of writing down features or activities or tasks or whatever it is, right? And to be super clear, it's not like become a thought leader. Jeff writes 1,000 articles. Right? That's actually not a good key result, even though it answers the question, who does what by how much, right? The behavior change that you're looking to change in that particular scenario is somebody else's, right? Maybe you don't need to write 1,000 articles. Maybe you need to write 10,000 or 20, right? Like it's, or maybe podcasts, et cetera, right? It's a variety of tactics you can go for. So half the battle, who does what by how much, right? That's half the battle. The second part is then to say, okay, is this if I do this, right? If I can get conference organizers to invite me to speak at their events at least 4 times a year, does that tell me that I've become more of a thought leader in the UX space? Yeah, right. That makes sense to me, right? And so maybe it does. And if it doesn't make sense, then even though you wrote a well-written key result, you're gonna have to write another one, right? Right? Like that's because that's not the right one. And then the downside of this is that sometimes you'll find that you've written a well-written key result, you kind of check it against your objective, makes sense. You convince yourself that this is a good goal that you've set for yourself, and then you start working towards it, And then something happens, or you learn something, or you see something along the way that tells you this is the wrong goal to chase, right? For example, right, let's say it's January 2020. And this is your goal. I want to become a UX thought leader, and I want conference organizers to invite me to 4 conferences a year, right? But you set that goal on January 1st, 2020, right?
No
3 months later, we're in lockdown,
Yep.
and there are no conferences,
Mm-hmm.
right? You got to change that goal, right? So,
Yeah.
Stuff happens. So like as the world turns, right, around you, and as new stuff happens in the world, and as you discover and learn new things and engage in trying to achieve these goals, you may find out that you're chasing the wrong behavior change, and that's perfectly okay, right? Like it's perfectly okay to say, you know what, I kind of been chasing this for 3 months. I'm not getting anywhere. It doesn't really fit. Nothing's working. I'm going to try something else. I think it's perfectly okay.
Yeah, and that's something too, like I've experienced, especially working in enterprise, where, you know, we get these OKRs and they become yearly priorities. We're not going to check in until next year to see if you hit the thing, right? And so, you know, this is something that I think a lot of times we fall for, you know, the sunk cost fallacy, where we spend all this time and effort doing a thing. We're going to keep doing a thing until we see some result, because God damn it, I've put so much time and effort into this. I'm not going to stop now.
That's right.
And I think that's something like to look out for too, especially in your personal life, where, you know, maybe you do spend 6 months and you realize like, hey, this was a complete waste of my time. It didn't get me the outcome that I expected. You know, keep doing it over and over and over again. It's not going to change that. You know, be ready to pivot and have that growth mindset looking back. Because that's the thing I think a lot of times too, when especially in big enterprise orgs, you know, we fail to treat software like an experiment, and we say we're agile, but we're not. And so, you know, we don't go and do the iterating. We don't do the testing. We don't go back and say like, this didn't work. This failed. Let's change it. Let's fix it. Let's make it better so it doesn't fail next time. And I think, you know, maybe people in their personal life, they get scared. I know I've certainly fallen for this, where, you know, I'm like, God, I'm known for this thing. I got to keep doing this thing. I can't change now. And so, you know, just, I don't know if you have any thoughts or anything about just how to keep from falling for that fallacy of, you know, the sunk cost fallacy.
It's so hard.
Just keep doing
it's so hard. Look, I mean, in the workplace, it's harder. It's largely, it's not largely, but it can be outside of your control. Where somebody says, look, we're pushing through, and you're like, boss, everything says no. Yeah, but I've committed to it to my boss, so we're doing it, right? In your personal life, it's up to you, ultimately, right? Like, you know, I have a friend who's whose daughter ended up working towards a UX career, you know, and she went to school and she kind of dropped out, and then she went to a different school and she completed that school and became a UX designer and got a job. And it was kind of the family business. My friend was also a UX designer, right? Okay. And she got a job and she started working, and she hated it. You know, like she just really didn't enjoy it, like doing the actual work. And at that point, you know, she had put in years of school, thousands of dollars into that education. There's a lot of sort of familial inertia, you know, pushing her in that particular direction, and she hated it. And it's really difficult, I think, once you've invested that much to get out of it and do something else, even though you've invested that much. But it ultimately it's up to you. And if it's not like if your objective is, for example, you can have an objective to say, I want to be happy in my career. Right, it's kind of a big and fluffy, a big objective, which is terrific. How do I know that I'm happy in my career? I don't. We can think of some OKRs on the spot, but if the work that you're doing isn't actually, fulfilling those behavior changes that you're looking for in yourself, etc., then, you know, it might be time to pull the plug and figure out how to make a course correction. And the reality is that it's only you, you know, that can do it. You know, one of the interesting challenges of success also is that you get stuck in a particular path. So, you know, for better or for worse, I'm the lean UX guy, right? Lean UX was really successful, particularly in the UX and the product management, product development world, and continues to be successful. Right. I've been the lean UX guy for like 15 years at this point, you know, and it's not like I don't want to be the lean UX guy anymore, but you know, in the last decade or so, I've been trying to be more than the lean UX guy. And it's hard, you know, it's hard because I put so much effort into becoming the lean UX guy that it feels like it's a shame to kind of get out of that. And at some point you've either got to embrace it, right? I've put in the effort. It's working for me. I'm just going to own this and try to do some other stuff around it, or make a clean break. I'm not making a clean break with Lean UX, but I think those are your choices. But there's only one person in charge at that point, and that's you. You have to make that decision.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's funny because from my personal journey back in 2000s, I graduated high school in 2000, went to college. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but my family was like, you need to get a business degree. You need to get an MBA. And I'm like, what am I going to do with a business degree, like run a business? I mean, I don't know, And so I went to school, and I ended up going to school for economics. And I ended up 2005, I'm from New Orleans. Hurricane Katrina hit. And that was what kind of sparked me to realize, the one thing I learned, if I take one thing away from economics, it's all the sunk cost fallacy and all these other things. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be an insurance salesman. I don't want to, And so I dropped out of school, and that's how I ended up, getting into design, UX design and stuff over time. But it kind of took an outside force for me to kind of realize I don't want to do this anymore. What am I doing with my life? Life's too short, And so I don't know. For me, who knows if Hurricane Katrina hadn't hit, I might be, we probably wouldn't be talking right now. I'd probably be selling insurance to you or something. Who knows? But anyway, I don't know. It's interesting. You are kind of in control of that, and I think that's frightening for a lot of people, because at work it's very comfortable, it's safe. People are going to tell you what to do, and you do it, and you get promoted, you get raises, whatever. But it's on you, and this is something I think. I don't know. A lot of people, this is probably why we tend to, make big plans by going to the gym in January, and then by February we haven't been, in weeks. I mean, so I don't know.
At work, there's someone to blame, right?
Yeah.
Well, my boss is making me do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
At home,
yeah,
there's no one to blame.
Yeah, it's all on you. Yeah, it's hard. And that's frightening. I mean, that's frightening for a lot of people, especially, people like your friend's daughter who was like, oh, I don't want to disappoint my parents. I don't want to do this. Right. I don't want to do that, and just, I don't know, ripping the Band-Aid off, and I don't know, but it's good. This is kind of, I love thinking about this, because there's a lot of people that listen to this show that are career shifters that, are doing completely different things, or maybe they're in something else. And, this is the kind of stuff kind of helps you think about that. And I think when the beautiful thing about OKRs is, one, you're hopefully tracking these things on a shorter basis. So you're seeing results sooner or not seeing results.
Yep.
So you can pivot faster so that you don't get stuck doing the same things over and over and over again for a year, and then realizing a year later that it was the wrong thing to do. You can, and if you can do that and track it sooner and iterate faster, I think personally, you don't get stuck to those things that you've been doing because you didn't waste your time. You only did it for a month or two.
Yeah.
So
you're exactly right. So let's say your objective for 2024 is to break into the AI world, right? I really would like to get into AI, right? Terrific. And your key result is, I'd like, I'd like to get at least 5 interviews in the next quarter with AI companies, right? And then you try, you realize AI companies aren't hiring UX people, right? No matter how hard you try right now, their focus is on the tech. They don't care about the user interaction. They don't care about the UX of it at all. And so there's just no UX work in the AI world. Okay. So maybe you pivot for a while and you figure out something else, like a different target or a different approach, or maybe you decide to try to figure out how to make the case for UX in AI. But the point is you're exactly right. What you want to do is you want to time box your OKRs to a relatively short cycle, a cycle that will tell you enough, will hopefully provide you with enough information to make a decision about whether to continue down this path or not, but not so long that you've invested so much that course correction is going to hurt a lot. Quarters are really good for this. Quarters, 12 weeks is a stick amount of time. 12 weeks typically will give you enough time to really give something, if you dedicate yourself to it, right? A significant amount of effort, you should start to see some kind of result or get some kind of data back on your progress. And at the end of that 12 weeks, you check back in with yourself, right? And see how you're doing towards that goal and whether the evidence says you should keep going or you should pivot or you should kill the idea. Right. So for example, we can talk about weight loss, right? I want to drop 10% of my weight. I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. Okay. I went to the gym 3 times a week for 12 weeks, 36 times at the gym. Okay. I lost 1% of my weight. Clearly that's not enough. Okay. We got to pivot. Right? I'm not abandoning this goal, right? I'm going to pivot, right? What am I going to do? I'm going to, 100 push-ups a day and a personal trainer. Okay, let's try that for 3 months, right? Point is that the tactics are the variable in this case. You're going to commit yourself to a specific goal, and the tactics that you take are going to be variable. And if you don't spend too much time on them, no more than 12 weeks, and in most cases that makes sense, you adjust as needed, right? And you have the evidence to justify the course correction. I've been going to the gym 3 times a week now for 3 months, seeing no results. I got to do something different.
Yeah. So you bringing up a lot of really great points about, tracking and measuring, and over time you might see dips, you might see a peak, you might see, a valley, something's more fluctuating, and it's less of a straight straight trajectory up or down. I'm curious, like, what types of tools might you recommend for people to track this? Obviously at work, maybe there's internal systems, there's some other systems. Are there, for personal life, are there tools that you like to use for, the average Joe who's not spending, thousands of dollars a month on software to measure and track these things over time? Do you have something you like to use?
Look, I keep it super simple, right? There's 2 tools that really can help you move this forward, and they cost nothing. Basically, the almighty spreadsheet. There's literally nothing it can't do. It's kind of incredible.
Oh, I've seen some stuff. It definitely does that you would never expect.
But like the almighty spreadsheet is a really easy way, like a Google Doc or a Notion page or something along those lines, that is just a living document that you update with the data on a daily basis manually. Mm-hmm. There's no reason. It's just you. Right? There's usually that you're not going to need any kind of automation to do that. But spreadsheets, super easy to do. There's lots of templates out there. There's one on my website too, if you're looking for awesome. It's not for personal OKRs, but who cares? Just use it for personal OKRs. So that's number 1. And then number 2 is Trello board, right? So Trello boards, again, free, basically super easy to use. Again, like, you could probably automate some data input into them, but you don't actually need it in that particular case.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I was even thinking, just off the top of my head, like sticky notes. I love sticky notes. If you've got a space on your wall, you could put up some sticky notes to your own Kanban board that way. I don't know. For me, what I love about that is I see it when I wake up in the morning and I walk past that wall and I can see the sticky notes and I can see the things, versus things that are just kind of stuck in a spreadsheet I have to open, obviously, it's all manual and nothing connects digitally, but just that like affirmation of seeing it or seeing it not move over time, and it's sort of like that, for me, like this sort of motivator to be like, I want to move that sticky this week, I want to get that moved over to the right. I don't know. No, it's a little bit of motive. That works for me.
It's funny you bring that up, because I didn't mention that simply because I've forgotten. I used to have a massive whiteboard in my office, and we used to have Post-it notes on it and move them around. And I love that. That was sort of like the basic way of doing things. And certainly pre-COVID, that's how we planned everything. And then everything moved into digital. And so we went online with Trello and Figma and FigJam and Mural and Miro and all these products. And then recently I moved into a new house. And I don't actually have the wall space for a whiteboard in here. And so I don't have a physical whiteboard anymore, and I forgot. But yes, you're absolutely right. Like there's nothing like the satisfaction of taking that one piece of Post-it note and just moving it into the done, or like I'm achieving something. I love that. That's absolutely, I'm +1 to that. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. The physical, I just love, I love paper books. I love pens. I like write, I just love that. I have notebooks and I carry a pen around me. I spent probably way too much on a pen, like an everyday carry pen that I just carry with me everywhere. And I always have a field notebook. I don't know. Maybe, and not everybody likes that, but that's me personally. I don't know. Maybe men of a certain age are into the physical stuff versus others. But the last thing I want to talk about, Jeff, is for folks who may be solopreneurs, freelancers, people that have sort of this weird balance between work and personal life. I'm curious, are there any pitfalls or things that you might want to have people avoid when it comes to tracking OKRs, and there's this weird sort of melding of personal and work kind of goals? Anything that you've experienced that maybe you want to tell people to look out for, pitfalls to avoid, things like that?
Look, we've covered a lot of them, honestly. Like sunk cost fallacy is a big one. I've invested so much in this already. Like if I quit this, I'm just not going to do this anymore, right? I think that's a big one. Group accountability, I think, really helps a lot. If you can put yourself kind of a community of folks who have similar goals, and you can either build your OKRs, your personal OKRs together, and then share them with each other, hold each other accountable on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis to check in and see how things are doing, ask for help, ask for support. That goes a long way. I've been working by myself now for 9 years. And the smartest thing I ever did was start a Slack group of people who do what I do for a living. And, over the years, that group has grown and collapsed and grown and collapsed. But we've dialed it in now to a group of about 18, 19, 20 people who have been in there for a long time. And that's what it's for. It's for support, venting, accountability, you name it. Help me out with this. How should I think about this? I keep banging my head against the wall, trying to generate leads for my business. What have you been doing? That type of thing. Yeah. So community really, really, really helps if you can find like-minded folks or folks with who have similar goals. That goes a long way. And again, this trap of measuring your activity rather than the outcome of that activity is it's tantalizing. It's tantalizing because measuring activity is easy, right? It's binary, right? Did you go to the gym today? Yes, I did. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you go to the gym 3 times this week? Yeah, I did. Okay. Did you lose any weight this week? Well, I went to the gym 3 times, but I had cheeseburgers every meal of the day for 7 days this week, right? So no, I didn't lose any weight, right? You see what I'm saying? So like, it's a lot easier to measure the activity and be like, look, I did it, right? It's literally binary, right? So and so there's we talked about the joy of moving that Post-it note over. It's the same kind of satisfaction. I checked a thing off my list, right? But if checking that thing off your list didn't bring you closer to your goal, then it didn't work. And you got to put something else on your list. And I think that is a really difficult transition for folks to make.
Yeah. And I want to call this out too. You brought up the Slack channels, the online communities. I think post-COVID, when we think about personal goals and things like that, I've seen an explosion in Slack, Discord, online meetups, things like that, where there are like-minded people getting together remotely. A lot of people are not extroverts. They don't like the idea of going and mingling with new people they've never met. And they like that idea of being able to kind of ease into relationships digitally and through a Slack channel. And so, whether it's, finance, whether it's career growth, people looking for jobs, other people that are similar interests, hobbies, things like that. There's so many of those Slack channels around today, and they're open. A lot of them, they're free. A lot of them, they don't charge anything to join. Some of them might have some fees associated. But anyway, there's so many things like that out there today. And, going and surrounding yourself, I will totally agree. I've been doing, the content creation podcasting for a year and a half or so. And it wasn't until 6 months ago that I found a community online. And I feel like just meeting these people, hearing their hearing the things they've failed at and all that stuff, and bringing ideas and feedback, asking for feedback, it's just made me such a better all around, designer and content creator, everything else. I can't stress that enough. Like finding people, surrounding yourself with the people that you want to be like, that you aspire to be like, is so important. So I love that. So Jeff, before we get out of here, I've got some questions that I like to ask all my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. But before we do that, anything else you want to add that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you think is important when we talk about personal OKRs?
Look, I think it's worth giving it a shot. I think it's worth trying to be intentional about one goal. Like if you don't do this today, like for folks who are intentional about their goals, consider using this as your system. If it isn't working for you right now, I'm not here to change anything in your world. But for folks who aren't particularly intentional about their personal goal setting, try this. Give it a shot. Try one goal, like what is fitness goal, career goal, music goal, like art goal, whatever is interesting to you, wherever your passion's like. Give it a shot and do it for a quarter. Like try a variety of techniques, see if you can move the behavior change forward and see what happens. I think you'll find it like similarly addictive in a good way and hopefully actually makes a difference in your life. But I'd give it a shot.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And that's the thing too, that we talked about before, like at the very beginning, was changing your behavior. And I think like when it comes to this idea of personal growth, personal goals, things like that, a lot of times it does require a change in your behavior. It requires changing your habits. It requires a lot of things that change you and how you think about things and everything else. And I feel like that to me is like such an important takeaway. Just from everything else we talked about, it's about changing your behavior, changing how you approach things, and even changing your behavior, how you approach goal setting in a way, right? So, that alone is important. So anyway, I love it, Jeff. Awesome. Thanks. All right. So I've got a few questions, like I said, I like to ask all my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better, completely unrelated to OKRs and everything else. First up, what is your favorite non-design book?
My favorite non-design book. I'm in a book club. You know what it is? It's The Storyteller by Dave Grohl. I loved that book.
Yes.
It's autobiographical, but it's like stories rather than like I was born in a small town. And there is some of that, like I was born in Northern Virginia, that type of thing. But it's incredible. Like the stories are ridiculous. Like his daughter's first piano lesson was from Paul McCartney. Right, like stuff like that. Like it's like
that's awesome.
And like how he ended up in Nirvana and what it was like hanging out with Kurt Cobain and all that. So I really love that book.
Yeah. No, if there's an audiobook, did he?
Yes, he narrates it.
He narrates it too. Oh, that's what I would definitely.
Yes, it's totally good. The audiobook is well worth it because he narrates it, and so like, and he's got he seems like a cool guy. I've never met him.
He does seem like I would definitely hang out with Dave.
Yeah, I feel like I would too.
Who wouldn't? If you don't want to hang out with Dave Grohl, I don't think I want to hang out with you.
Right.
All right. What is your favorite non-design podcast?
You know what? It's super interesting. I've been on so many podcasts. I don't listen to podcasts. So, and this is related to the first answer because if I have the time, right, to put on headphones or I have the time to listen to something, I will listen to music. So I don't have a favorite podcast. I just don't listen to that many podcasts.
All right. We'll throw an audible here. Favorite album?
Favorite album? Gosh.
That's a hard question.
What am I listening to these days? I mean, so many. So many. I'm a big fan of like the dad rock genre.
All right.
Right. So like The National is one of my favorite artists.
Okay. Yeah.
And their last two records, which are basically kind of one double length album, are two of my favorites that I'm currently super heavy rotation. I've seen them a bunch of times in the last year. I'm going to see them again at the end of the month. So big fan of The National.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, I like them a lot too. All right. What is your favorite meal? This could be something you've cooked, something you ate at a restaurant, something your grandma used to cook. Favorite meal? My favorite meal is my wife makes chili, and it's the family's favorite meal. It's everybody's favorite. Like, so I have one daughter who's in university now, and I've got one who's almost finishing high school. And so the best part is when we're all together and my wife makes chili and everybody loves it, and it's the best. I love it. Now, beans or no beans?
Beans, yeah.
Beans. I like put beans in. My wife doesn't like beans and chili. I like beans and chili. It makes it a little bit harder, Just like, I don't know.
Crucial.
I love it. We moved to Cincinnati recently, a couple years ago. And I don't know if you've ever been to Cincinnati, but they have Cincinnati style chili, and they put chili on spaghetti with like inches of just cheddar cheese. And I don't want to like I hate like knocking it, but it's just like, it's so funny because we moved up here. I was like, oh, they're chili. I'm like, can't do it. Yeah. Can't do it. Sorry, Cincinnati. Yeah. I love you, but no, I don't love you that much. All right. What is your favorite vacation spot?
That's, again, such a great question. Favorite vacation spot? We went to, you know where it was? It's the south of Spain. I know that sounds very fancy, but like, so in Andalusia, down in the south of Spain, near Granada, there's a cute little town called Salobreña, and we had a fantastic family vacation there a few years ago, and we're still talking about it, and it was just beautiful, white villas and blue. I guess technically it's the sea, it's the Mediterranean, near Gibraltar. It's not too far from Gibraltar. Super cool.
Yeah,
that's my favorite spot.
Oh wow, I love that. Your Spanish accent was really spot on with your Spanish accent. I'm so used to in the States here. I was in New Orleans and we had a lot of people from like Mexico and Venezuela and stuff. I'm so used to the Central American accent.
I speak
your Spanish accent,
and I learned in Spain, so.
So you don't sound like Central American. All right, I love it. Last question. What is your favorite design tool that is not Figma?
Look, my favorite design tool. I'm kind of like you said it before, and it's right here on my desk. It's this and
yeah, there you go. Little
this.
Sharpie action.
There they are. That's it. Really, I mean, that's really it. Like almost all the ideas. I mean, you can see it. Like you could see the desk, but like there's just it's everything is on Post-its and here on my desk, and so that's it.
Oh my God! If you saw I've got like Post-its, like they're everywhere. I've got like so many freaking Post-its. They're sticking everywhere. I've got them right here. Yeah. The Post-it notes. I love the Post-it notes. I made the mistake not long ago of buying a giant pack of generic brand sticky notes. Ooh. And I'm trying to go, they're so bad. They don't stick to the wall. They're awful. And I cannot wait. I hate to throw them away, because I'm like, I don't know. I just, I bought them. I'm going to use them, but I regret it so much. So if you're listening, buy the 3M. It's worth it. Extra buck, couple extra bucks. Just spend the money and they stick to the wall and you don't have to worry about it. All right, Jeff. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Before we get out of here today, give yourself a plug. You're working on your new book. Tell us a little bit about the new book, when it's going to be released, where we can find it, and all that stuff, and anything else you want to give.
So the book's about OKRs. The book is called Who Does What by How Much. If you go to okr-book.com, you'll get all the information that you need about it. It launches May 28th. So the manuscript is finally done. It's in production now. We're going to ship in a couple of weeks. You can pre-order the Kindle copy on Amazon, and then the hard copy comes out on May 28th, and then it'll be available in a variety of different places, but mostly online. And I'm super excited about that book. So if you do get a chance to buy it and you do get a chance to read it, most importantly, ultimately, so thank you for that, number one. And then second of all, a review would go a long way. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. All right, great. Well, this should be out around then. Okay. I'm not sure exactly when this is going to be out, but I think it'll probably be out early June. So right when this book is coming out. So okr-book.com. That's a good domain name, by the way. Yep. That's a good buy. Hold on to that one. Yep. So make sure to check it out, and we'll put all that stuff in the show notes. Jeff, thanks again for coming on. This has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome.